Marcos? Y muy bien, y bienvenidos y bienvenidas. We'll have a few people watching later on, which is just fine. Hoy vamos a practicar muchísimo con el subjuntivo y vamos a hablar de sus preguntas. We'll talk about all your questions because I'm sure you'll have a few. And we're going to look at a couple little exception things. And okay. I'm sure some of you, those of you who have watched a fair number of the Español con Juan videos are not surprised that his teaser of I'm going to meet a blonde was, yeah, kind of tongue-in-cheek. He is one who definitely uses a lot of humor to teach. So, you know, a blonde beer. Yeah, that's the thing.
And he was two-timing that beer, right? He had two in that one.
Sí, eso es, exacto, yeah, exactly right. Plus, you know, the normal serving of beer, if one gets a beer in a pint in England, that's way bigger than the little cañas that are served in Spain where he was raised. Because when you I mean, not that you can't get a big beer in Spain, and obviously you can, but a lot of people will order it in a caña, which is kind of really a glass that winds up being about that big. They're not like super big, whereas, you know, the English pints are, you know, yeah, a pint. Yeah, there you go. Y, hola, Jen. Okay. Primero, ¿alguna pregunta? Any kind of question on that video, the latter half of it? Like if there was some phrase you didn't get that he used, or anything that sounded a little off or a little weird, or didn't know what he meant?
I had a question. When he says estoy dando un paseo por el campo, why? So dando is the ing form of dar, right?
Sí,
Which
exacto.
is to give. So why is he giving a walk?
Oh, why is he giving a walk? Hey, buena pregunta. Sí, porque there's not going to be a logical answer to this, but rather just this is the way they phrase it. Dar un paseo is the way they pair up. I mean, it's one of their phrases for taking a stroll, taking a walk. Yeah. And I know it sounds weird because dar un paseo. And similarly, you know, you'll hear dar used to say, mis tíos dan una fiesta. My parents or my aunt and uncle they're throwing a party. We might say in English, they're having a party, but it'll never be, you know, well, I'm not going to say never, but it's frequent to hear people say, ellos dan una fiesta, they give a party, but it really means like people having a party. Dar is used a little bit differently in Spanish in more situations than give would be in English. Dar un paseo, take a stroll, take a walk, or people might use the one word verb pasear. They might phrase it as dar una caminata, take a hike, but again, it's dar. Yeah. And it's not tomar. Oh, yeah. So, okay, here's a good thing to say. In English, take a walk, pero take como tomar, no se usa. We don't use tomar with pasear or paseo. It would never be tomo un paseo, I take a walk. It's always dar un paseo. It's just the way they phrase it, but not for a reason that we would in English consider logical. It's just a pattern of words you have to hook together to get that idea. Es buena pregunta. Any other thing?
I had a couple more. Vale means okay.
Vale is okay. It is from my time as a student in Spain. I have a very bad habit of overusing vale. Vale is used all the time as okay, sure. When you want verification that somebody agrees with you, vamos al parque, vale, yeah, let's go to the park, do it. Okay, yeah.
Is that more common to Spain, or like would people from Mexico and South America use that?
I think I would say it is ubiquitous in Spain. You hear it constantly in Spain. You hear it sometimes in Mexico, but other things as well for okay in Mexico. You even hear in Mexico okay, which, it's one of these things that has been imported. Una palabra prestada is a loaned word, essentially. So, and then regionally in Latin America, depends on where you are. Yeah, everybody knows what it means. Everybody knows what it means. Yeah, universally understood, used constantly in Spain, and I would say, certainly understood, but won't be as not as frequent, not as some people might think overused in Latin America. And that slang thing is an important thing to just be aware it's always out there, because it will pop out at you at times you don't expect, like the use of tío, uncle, to say guy. For any random male, tío is what they use in Spain, but they'll use different words in Latin America. There they do use different slang. And actually, if we get time for a little video today, you might even hear a little. And it sometimes depends on the age of the person too. So be aware that sometimes those little slang words won't really make a huge difference in what you understand, but it might throw you off a little bit. So you know what it means.
I vaguely remember I was on a project that part of it was in Spain a number of years ago, and I vaguely remember them always saying for like, okay, or, I agree or whatever, claro.
Oh, yeah, claro, also, sure, yeah. Claro means clear, yeah. And that's used, again, as one of those okay affirmation. But yeah, see, it's another one.
On that same kind of topic, I remember also, like, in French, everybody would say d'accord, I'm in agreement.
Oh, d'accord.
So what's the kind of the
another way, like d'accord?
Of acuerdo.
De acuerdo. It's very, very close. De acuerdo. And the full phrase would be estoy de acuerdo. Estoy de acuerdo. I agree. That's the formal way of expressing I am agree. I am in accord. I am of accord, but that's the way they use it. Estoy de acuerdo, but people will shorten it very typically to de acuerdo. Claro, de acuerdo, vale. Those are all the affirmational kind of okay, sure comments. Yeah. Okay. Otras preguntas. Lori, do you have any others? You said you had a few.
Just one. Que chulo, that meant like que bueno, right?
Que bueno? How good?
Or que chulo.
Oh, que chulo. Chulo is another kind of slang. Chulo is kind of like saying cute.
Okay, because when Google Translate told me chulo means pimp.
Oh, it does mean that too.
So I was like, if I use that, would that be insulting to someone?
Yeah, do you want to be careful with how you use that? Well, maybe, but yeah, in general. So chulo is, I would say, again, a little more common in Spain, but it can mean pimp. Yes, it can. It also means, great, cool, cute. Okay. Yeah. In Mexican, Puerto Rican, cute, good looking, anything like that. But it will, a lot of Oh, wow, Chile. I'm checking it out. Chile, it's pretty bad in Chile. Worse than pimp. But yeah, okay. Again, yeah, because we have so many different countries that speak Spanish, you'll get different variations. And even amongst native speakers, when they travel between countries, they sometimes run into these kind of little problems. A word may be considered, as we would politely say, vulgar, or like a cuss word in one country and someplace else completely normal. And, that is just something that you have to navigate as you go, depending on where you are. Ok, a ver. A ver. Ok, bien. Vamos a ver. Let's take a look. A menos que haya otra pregunta, unless there is another question. Let's move on a little bit here. We're going to take a look at this little thing that is the subjunctive. And the subjunctive is something that throws literally a terror into a lot of people. And it really need not, because but it does, because we have a poor equivalent for it in English. Some people like to say it doesn't exist in English. It kind of does, but the issue is in English, we might use 4 or 5 different combinations of words to say what comes out to subjunctive in Spanish. So the difficulty for us as English speakers coming into and understanding Spanish is, why do we use subjunctive, which is legitimately challenging because it is used in a number of situations. And the big description of it, if you're thinking in English, is sort of a weird description. But the description of subjunctive is it talks about an activity that we might plug in the word may or might happen in English. Subjunctive is used to express activities that are not part of the factual world. And I think for those of us who speak English, that sounds totally illogical. But it is a fact. In many languages, not just Spanish. Subjunctive is also used because it talks about something that is not part of the factual world. Subjunctive is used also to seed doubt into whether or not something is going to happen. Subjunctive never presumes something is a fact. It cannot do that. So because that is kind of a difficult thing to wrap our minds around, we want to see some concrete. We want to start out with some concrete examples of certain phrases that will just use subjunctive so that I link these words as a lead-in to subjunctive, okay? And if you start to link certain ideas to, used with subjunctive, and just accept that, just accept it, it makes it a little bit easier to learn the subjunctive. Also, it's good for you to know because sadly for those of us who speak English, subjunctive is used quite a lot in Spanish, so it will pop up. And probably one of your best jobs as you get little videos that I will give you for homework is to start to notice, not the first time you listen maybe, but the second time you listen to the video or the third time, because most of the time you do have to listen to it about 3 times. Start to notice how people weave in subjunctive. start to notice how it is used, and you will find yourself noticing it is used in things that's like, I didn't study that, but just make a mental note and, maybe come back and ask me, why did they use subjunctive in that? And often it's going to be a reason like, because whether that action expressed by that verb happens or not is considered to be a point of doubt. We don't know if it will happen. Okay. And I'll give you
one of those triggers was no cray-okay, but how about cray-okay? Just plain old.
Cray-okay does the exact opposite. That is a perfect question, Nora, because cray-okay, anything that expresses sure, and you might say, well, if the person says, I think, I might think Santa Claus really exists. That I'm not right. Yeah. If a little kid says, creo que Santa Claus existe, he should be using existe. Santa Claus exists. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, even though you would say, well, so okay, so what happens is this whole thing of doubt versus certainty, factual versus non-factual, we tend to overanalyze it in English. If the person speaking says they're sure about something, they're going to use present tense or, they could be using past too, but, they'll be using what we call indicative, not the non-subjunctive.
Okay.
If you're sure, even if you're wrong, but if you're sure, you might be dead wrong. See, and here's where we overanalyze. But if you say, I'm sure, that needs indicative, meaning a present or a preterite or an imperfect, something that is part of the indicative family. And present tense, imperfect tense, preterite, future, those all belong into indicative, because they're talking about the factual world.
Along that line,
Mhm.
if for es importante que, if you say no es importante que, would that still be subjective?
It will still be subjunctive. It will
Or
still be
subjunctive.
subjunctive. Yeah. The es importante. Let me give you a little. This is also a good question, and I'm going to show you this not as a please go memorize this, but I'm going to show you this as a. The reason he put es importante is because the reason he had those phrases he had in that video, the es importante, no creo que, ojalá, and all the others. Okay. The reason he plugged those in was that these are things you typically hear. If you talk to somebody for 30 minutes straight, you'd be likely to hear one of those things. Or you talk to people all day long in Spanish, you're likely to hear one of those ideas. So he chose things that are commonly used in everyday conversations. This idea of es importante, okay, and this que is always super important. Que is frequently going to pop up as a part of any of these formulas. Okay, and the subjunctive never comes in front of the que, it always comes after the que. Es importante que, it's important that. I could say es importante, and notice we're going to plug in a person with es importante. Es importante que es importante que todos escuchen. It's important that everybody listen. And this es importante is what they call impersonal phrases. Impersonal phrases is one of the categories that will typically use subjunctive. And all these impersonal phrases start with an es and some kind of descriptor. I'm going to show you another example. It's important that everybody listen is subjunctive because it's important means that we're setting kind of a standard, but we don't know if that standard is going to be met. 80% of you may listen. 20% of you may listen. I got no clue how many. I don't know if that activity of escuchen is going to actually happen or not. It may be important. It's like telling your kids clean the bathrooms, but you don't know if it's going to happen. That's the best thing I can really tell you. Tell your kids, give them a chore. Hey kids, wash the car. Hey kids, clean that. Is that going to happen? You really don't know, do you? Okay, fine. So es importante could just as easily become something like and I got to get my, I want to take my underlining out here. Es posible que, es imposible que, sí, es interesante que, but notice this que, that's a big deal because it means we're leading up into talking about a new person. Es imposible doesn't talk about any human being. It's just, it is impersonal because it does not reference a human being. There you go. Es with a little adjective does not reference any human being. Tom, Dick, or Harry, right? It's talking about a general situation. But when we set up the this es, it's likely going to use subjunctive. Okay. Often. Here is where it cannot. Here is where it cannot use subjunctive because of the meaning of this word. Es verdad que. That's an exception, and it will not use subjunctive. Why? Because of this word. If it's true, I have no reason to use subjunctive because truth belongs in the land of indicative. So let's fill in some examples so that you see why this does what it does. Es posible que es posible que haya mucho tráfico a las 8 de la mañana. It is possible that there is a lot of traffic at 8 in the morning because of rush hour, right? But es posible does not mean that thing of traffic existing or loads of cars existing out there on the highway. We don't really know if that's going to happen. So we use a subjunctive, which in this case, the haya is a subjunctive of I, right? Es imposible que entiendan la situación. Es imposible is one of those phrases that takes subjunctive. It just does, just kind of get used to that. I'm going to take this one out and leave the es verdad que, so we, es verdad que tengo suficiente dinero. It's true that I have enough money. Because it's a fact, I will not use subjunctive. Yeah. But this word truth is what dictates that. Yeah. And I want you to notice something else because this is something you may hear as well. Let's go back to es importante. I'm going to show you a contrast of when we use subjunctive and when we don't. Es importante, I might say.
I lost you.
Oh, you lost me. Oh, meaning don't understand. Whoop.
Everybody. There
Oh,
That's just my internet's unstable, I guess.
oh, that kind of loss. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry. You're
Okay.
back.
We can also say, no, do whatever you have to do, Nora. Es importante escuchar. There's a difference in meaning here. So I want you to hear, because one uses subjunctive and one does not. And why? Es importante escuchar. It's important to listen. That's just talking in general for everybody. It's important to listen, and we do the same thing in English. It's important to listen. We don't do anything with escuchar. But why is this different? Es importante que todos escuchen. It's important that everybody, the que and the injecting a human being into this is what makes that subjunctive happen. That is a structural thing that you should kind of be aware of. Should you understand it right now at a deep level? Maybe not. That's okay. But just know, you could hear somebody say either one of these sentences. But if they're just talking in super general terms about no human being in particular, it might be cut down to this. Es importante escuchar. Notice, no word que. No word que in there. No human being mentioned at all. Okay. Somebody.
So it's the K that triggers the subjunctive.
It's the que and a specific human being being mentioned.
Okay.
Any human being. Okay. Let's take a look at this third one here. Es imposible entender el subjuntivo.
Yeah.
There's a typical attitude. This is es imposible entender el subjuntivo. This does not talk about any specific human being. It's just a real general statement. And I don't have the word que, and I don't have a human being. So I just plug in the infinitive. So it's in a certain sense, it is a structural thing. Yeah. When we have these impersonal phrases starting with an es, and we plug in the que, and now we talk about a person, yo, tú, nosotros, mis amigos, mis vecinos, mi hijo, mi hija, anybody. That is what is going to kick in with the subjunctive, and it's just the pattern they have. So that's a really good question. You know, if we go back to the idea of, es importante que, he pulled that one out because it's just a common thing to say in conversation. There are other phrases that are similar to es importante que. They use a different word than importante, and they will also use subjunctive when they use que and when they plug in an actual human being rather than talking in general terms. But this thing here, no creo que, that is subjunctive, always subjunctive after the que, because we are specifically saying, I don't think. And whenever I have doubt, whenever I think that something doesn't really exist, I need to plug in subjunctive.
Can we
That
go
verb
on?
duda or whatever. Does duda mean doubt? Or
Right. Yeah. So, okay.
Does that take
No
subjunctive
creo
too?
que, no creo que could be very tied, is very much tied into like this would also use subjunctive.
Okay,
Dudo que says I doubt. Any statement where you say the person says that doesn't not happening, not happening. I don't think this is right. That is always used with subjunctive. So, and actually one of the phrases that he used at the end that I did not put on your list was tal vez. Dudo is very specific. I doubt. Yeah. And I doubt is expressing the same kind of negative idea of no existence as no creo que.
okay.
That's what it does. It's using a different word to say it, but it's the same concept of doubt the existence of that thing happening. Okay, so no creo que bleeds out into other verbs that may express doubt, like dudo que. And even sometimes tal vez, maybe, but sometimes people may use tal vez with subjunctive or without, and whether they do that kind of tells you how maybe is very iffy, yeah? Maybe means maybe yes, maybe no. If somebody uses tal vez with subjunctive, they really doubt that action is going to happen. Okay, so I'll give you a really, really easy example of that. It's tal vez is kind of, and that the reason I left tal vez off your list was this. Tal vez llueva mañana. Maybe it'll rain tomorrow. And because somebody uses llueva, you're kind of bumping up the level of doubt. You're making the maybe more of a probably not. Somebody could grammatically also be correct and say tal vez llueve, tal vez llueve instead of tal vez llueva, tal vez llueve. And they're saying, well, maybe it'll rain, but you know what? There's a possibility. Maybe is an iffy because it's got one foot in both territories of yes, it will, no, it won't. So words like quizás, maybe, again, or tal vez, maybe, somebody could use either subjunctive or indicative. And which one they choose tells you how much they doubt that that thing will happen. Okay, and that's the reason I took that off the list, because you may hear that either way. And right now, you don't need to hear the maybe you will and maybe you will. You need to know which things absolutely pair up with subjunctive. Okay, so
Could I run an example past you/us for a second? I'm kind of hung up on the no creo que. And I was kind of just sitting here thinking about subjunctive versus just plain old present tense. So suppose I said something like, no me gusta las manzanas. I was looking around the room here and I thought, okay, I gotta find something, some noun. I don't like apples. But what if I was gonna say something, I mean, in English, I could also say, I don't think I like apples. And I'm trying to figure out how I would, I don't think I like apples seems to be like it would use the subjunctive somehow. And would it be gusten? Okay. I don't think me gusten las manzanas. Okay.
But you might be more likely to say that as Oh, I don't think he likes them. I don't think, like you're discussing what to put on the menu. Oh, the kids don't want apples. The kids don't want them. No creo que les gusten las manzanas. I don't think they like them. Probably more likely to use it that way, but yeah, no creo que les gusten las manzanas. That is right. That is, will
Okay.
exactly use a subjunctive.
Yeah, I mean, the English on that is a lot simpler, right? Everybody would kind of know. I don't think that means, it means just no. You know,
Right. See, in English, we don't even have anything that approaches. You might say, I don't think that they may, no, you wouldn't even. English uses a variety of things, and this is why it's hard, because there is no one translation of a subjunctive idea in
Mhm.
English. English might say, I think he may come today. But you may just as easily say, oh, no, it's important for him to come today. It's important that he comes today. It's important for him to come today. We use infinitives, we use the word may, we use the word might. We might just use plain old verb. Plain old verb. English uses a variety of different structures, and Spanish goes into very specific structures with certain ideas. And the idea of subjunctive is that indicative, meaning present tense, preterite tense, imperfect tense, they talk about facts. Something is happening, something did happen. Subjunctive is used to talk about things that might, could, maybe, or flat out, I don't think that exists. And we don't have a good comparison for that in English. What we've got are actually, in point of fact, really rotten comparisons. And we do all different kinds of things in English. So you have poor point of reference to do a comparison. And the English examples will use a variety of different structures. Okay.
Una
Hence-
otra
hence the
pregunta.
fear of-
Oh.
I'm just going to say, hence the fear of using this.
Yeah, it's a subjunctive is a tough and intimidating thing because we kind of want to reason out things in English of, well, it should be this way. And then we see a rule. You just kind of need to know. It's helpful at first just to know, here are phrases that will typically use subjunctive, but understanding the why is like looking for pure logic. And we don't always get that.
Let's go eat, babe.
Yeah. Okay. Bien. Diana, you had a question.
Yeah, back to a menos que and antes de que.
Yeah.
I understand the beginning clause uses the subjunctive. How do you conjugate the following clause? So unless they clean their room, they're not going to the movie.
Yes. Okay. This one here, a menos que. It
Yeah.
could lead off the sentence, or it could be in the second half of the sentence. So whatever comes after a menos que has to be subjunctive.
Right.
Because that's the part where we say, unless this happens. And the unless tells you, oh, well, that activity hasn't happened yet. And that's why
So
menos
then-
que is followed by, because that activity plugged into a menos que has not yet happened.
I get that part. A menos que mis nietos no limpian sus cuadros, then no van a ir a la cine.
Okay. Sí,
It's
entiendo.
the van a ir that I wasn't certain of.
I know, okay, sí, claro, okay. A menos que, you know what? And I am going to plug that into here. We're going to plug all the question words into here because I'll appear bigger. A menos que mis nietos, unless my grandkids, a menos que mis nietos limpien
Sus cuatros.
sus cuartos, no van,
No van
no van al
ir.
parque.
Oh,
No van al parque, por
okay.
ejemplo. Yeah, it could be anything.
So
A
the
menos,
second verb is not subjunctive.
right.
That's my
Right.
question. So you conjugate it in,
We could switch the order of those phrases. We could look at it as this is because this is a clause. Yeah. It's
See.
a partial part of a sentence, and this is a separate part of a sentence, right? I could easily flip the order of that with that particular one. No van al parque. And that's a definite.
right,
It's a grandma's rule, yeah. No van al parque a menos que ellos limpien sus cuartos. A menos que is always 100% of the time going to use subjunctive, always.
Okay.
But the order of that phrase, the order of the clauses can be inverted and there's no change in meaning.
okay.
That may not happen with all of these phrases that take subjunctive. So, por ejemplo, for example, es importante que, you know what, that is not going to flip
Right.
the order. That it just won't make sense. Ojalá que is not going to flip the order, but a menos que might, antes de que might, and para que even might. So sometimes you get the clauses leading off and sometimes they follow. So these last three, I would say, the order of the clauses is flexible. It's flexible. It's flexible. And that
Because
might
on
help.
that, but antes de que, you could also have the same example with the going to the park. You could say,
Exacto.
we are going to clean our rooms antes de que vaya.
Sí,
No.
vamos,
Parque.
okay. Yeah,
Los limpian.
exacto. Yeah, exactly right. Antes de que. Antes de que. And we're going to talk about some other things that will be kind of foolers with para and antes de que after we do our examples. We want to do our actual, real, here are the pattern kind of subjunctives first. Okay. See. So the que is what signals. Now I'm going to get a verb that is in subjunctive, right? And it's always going to use the opposite vowel from what you think is correct. And that is what tells the person, don't think that's going to happen. Don't think that action is actually going to happen, or we just don't know yet, right? Putting it into llegue instead of llega is what tells you, not certain about who's coming in, right? Estudies tells somebody, not sure that you're really studying, yeah? Entendamos says, not really sure that we get that. Yeah, and coma indicates, don't really know what that person's going to eat. Okay, and we'll talk about these oddballs later in class, but we're going to use we want to get the, see.
Before we jump into these examples, I'm just want to ask a question. I may be stating the obvious, but to me, it wasn't quite fully obvious. So when we use subjunctive for verbs that do a stem change in regular present tense, does that stem change always carry through to subjunctive?
Always, always, always.
Okay.
Sí, sí. Exacto, always. Yeah. The little video I gave you with the guy writing on the like blackboard.
He
With
just
the
said yes
forms.
or no on stem changes, but it wasn't clear to me that yes means, like all the time.
Yes. So here's why the stem changes will happen. In order to use a subjunctive, the like base form I start off with to form a subjunctive is the yo form. That is the dirty little secret. The yo form is what you start off with. You start off with the yo form, you ditch the on the end of the yo form, and then you just plug in the opposite vowel from what you think should be right. The opposite vowel of the indicative. So AR verbs take ER-IR endings. ER-IR verbs take AR endings. They look wrong, but they're right because they're subjunctive. Okay, subjunctive takes the opposite ending, and that is a signal. It tells somebody, oh, don't think that's really happening, or maybe it won't, or we just don't really know. That is what the idea it expresses to a native Spanish speaker. But if you start with the yo form, you cannot go wrong. So, stem changes, yep, they happen. And all those go verbs, salgo, tengo, vengo, because you start with yo, you'll hear all those go, go, go endings too, right? But we'll get back to that. So, okay, so here's what happens, right? So,
one just quick follow-up on that. So, like on the third example on the list you're showing us right now, entendemos, and entender is a stem changing verb.
it is.
But you don't get to entendemos by starting with the yo form.
Right. So, in other words, a stem change will still be a stem change. A stem change will still be a stem change. And that means if we're using a nosotros, we'll use the opposite ending, amos, for entender. But no stem change because it's in that stem change family, and nosotros never gets a stem change. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it follows that same pattern. So, the yo form, the subjunctive yo form would be entienda. The tú subjunctive form would be entiendas. The a usted subjunctive form would be entienda, right? The ellos, ellas, ustedes subjunctive form would be entiendan. But because nosotros falls out of the boot, is not within the boot, it's entendamos. We go, yeah. So there are stem changers like they always are. They just use an opposite vowel type ending. That's all. Yeah. Sí. Eso es. Okay. So let's look at examples of how we use these. Bien. Okay. No creo que. What am I going to do with entender?
Entiendes.
And it will have to be and yeah, I've got to put in my stem change. Entiendas. And we have to, yeah, it can't be entiendes.
Entiendas.
Entiendas. And this is why, again, this is another one of those reasons why for English speakers who love the schwa and the sound, getting these vowels pronounced exactly right is so super important, because yeah, pronouncing it very clearly as entiendas instead of entiendes is really an important thing. Okay, no creo que. This is one of the oddball words because it's an odd word.
Yeah.
Yeah. No creo que haya comida. I don't think there's any food. No creo que tú entiendas. I don't believe you understand. I don't think you understand. Yeah. No creo que haya comida. I don't think there's food. I could be wrong. Don't go by logic. Maybe I'm wrong that there's no food. But yeah, if I don't think this thing exists, I use subjunctive. Okay. Es importante que, it's important that you guys help out.
Ayuden.
Ayuden. Es importante que ustedes ayuden. Now, I want to show you the difference here. It's kind of subtle, but it's important in the way we structure this. Es importante ayudar. Means something slightly different. Es importante ayudar. It's important
To help.
to help. And I'm not talking about any human being in there. I'm just talking about the world in general, in the vaguest sort of terms, right? So once I get specific about plugging in an actual human being, yeah, I've got to have that que, the human being, and a subjunctive.
How
Because
about
this
if
is
I'm a little bit more specific? I was trying to add a little bit more to these sentences, and so I said, es importante que ustedes ayuden el señor Gomez después de escuela. But that's
Okay.
very specific. It's important that you all help Mr. Gomez.
Sí, es
You still
importante
use
que ustedes
subjunctive?
ayuden al señor Gómez después
Yeah.
de la clase, por ejemplo. Sí,
Okay.
yeah. You can add on more things. I'm just
Because it's more specific, though. That's what I thought, maybe.
Al señor Garcia is just telling who you want them to help. Yeah,
And they might not anyway.
right. And Mr.
Okay.
Garcia could be left all by himself doing all the lifting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really
Okay.
know. Yeah. The part that is talking about an action is that what do we do with that ayudar, right?
Okay.
Here, I'm just talking about anybody in the most general way. I'm not really talking about any specific person, but now I'm talking about you guys, right? I could change it to es importante que Alicia ayude. It's important for Alicia to help. Who I plug in determines what happens with that verb ayudar, right? So es importante que ayudas. It's important that you specifically get off your duff and help. Yeah. I'm now. So notice, es importante que ayudes. It's important that you help. I am now putting responsibility on you specifically. I'm naming you. I'm calling you out. But es importante ayudar is just flippy floppy general. It's important
Okay.
to help. Who? I don't know, anybody. Yeah. So, okay. Es importante. It's important that you explain this to me. Es importante que tú me
Expliques.
expliques. And here is what happens. And you said it exactly right. I don't know if you spelled it that way, but you said it exactly right. But notice, this is what you might say. This is an irregular form. It's an irregular spelling, not really an irregular form. And why does that happen? If I spell it, and so notice when you're talking, the spelling doesn't matter because you said it right. Expliques. You used, yeah, expliques. But we cannot spell expliques in Spanish with this. I have a hard time even thinking to type this. Yeah, because CE cannot make explicar. We want it to sound like it comes from explicar. It needs a ka sound. And this CE cannot make a k sound, can it? It can only make a s sound. Explices. We don't want it to sound like explicit. Nobody said explices. You wouldn't even think, you think that this sounds wrong. It does sound wrong, yeah? So in order to make it sound like it comes from explicar and to spell it right, but see, if you're speaking, you say it correctly. You just need to know when you write it out, it's got a spelling change to get to that k sound, because CES in Spanish can't make the k sound. Okay, vale. Ojalá que los clientes, hopefully the customers have enough money.
Tengan,
Tengan. Ojalá que los clientes tengan suficiente dinero. Hopefully the customers have enough money. Okay. And tengan comes from tengo. So this is where that little rule kicks in. Start with yo. Drop the o. Add the opposite vowel. Yeah. Here we add an a because it comes from tener, an er verb, right? So, you know, you're still conjugating with an n at the end, right? For clientes, you're just doing an an and it's not tener. Okay. Ojalá que mi amigo me
Llame.
llame. Llame, okay? So here's where you hear this whole thing of when we tell people stay away from that English schwa sound like it's the plague. Because this is one of those words, llame, where a lot of English speakers will get kind of soft in the palate. And yeah, if you're not clear on that vowel being llame, it might sound like llama. And nobody, and if you pronounce it as llama,
That's a different sound.
ain't nobody gonna understand. To use really poor English, nobody will understand what do they really mean. Yama, and that sound in English. We have a real tendency as English speakers to plug in the even when we don't think we want to say it. It comes out of our mouths because it happens so much in English. It's got to be a real clear vowel. Llame. Ojalá que mi amigo me llame. It would not be said as ojalá que amigo me llama. That's all. Let me say, hey, what if you just, you know what? We all make mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. Even. Ojalá que mi amigo me llama. If you actually said that because you were just thinking fast, and you were not at like red flag up, ojalá que, yeah. Would somebody understand you? Yes, they would understand you, but it would sound funny. So, is it a no big deal? In a way, but it sounds funny, and you're very much marking yourself as somebody who is a beginning speaker. I guess you could say that. It's really super important that we don't, you know, it's important for us to get into the habit of using the right structures. That's what it boils down to. So what we want you to get used to is here are phrases that are often heard, and therefore you should start to get used to, and here's a manageable chunk of like 5 or 6 phrases that should send up a red flag of I need a subjunctive. And why? So that you can clearly be understood, and so that you sound more natural, right? Okay, let's take a look here. And here I added more. I was in the Nora mode. I added more ideas here, yeah? Bien? Okay. You can't drink any beer unless you eat something with your drink. In other words, I don't want you to get drunk. Okay. What happens to comer? No puedes tomar cerveza a menos que
Tú comas.
Comas.
comas. And in general, I will not say that word. I put it in there to be easier for you to make the association. But when people actually say something like this, typically that tu is going to be bye-bye, because that tells you everything. The tu was there as a prompt. Okay. So typically nobody's going to say the word tu in, well, I'm not going to say nobody. Usually people will not say the tu. No puedes tomar cerveza a menos que comas algo. Yeah. You can't have beer unless you eat something. That means you're not eating now. Uh-oh, I see you're not eating. You're going to get schnockered. It's time to eat. But I don't know, maybe you're hell-bent on getting blottoed. So yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen, right? So because I don't know if you're going to really eat, and I'm telling you, ooh, I see this isn't happening. It does not exist. You're not doing it. Yeah, I got to plug it in that way. The a menos que is a red flag. Okay. No voy a entender el video a menos que, I'm not going to understand the video unless I read the subtitles.
Lea.
Lea. A menos que yo lea los subtítulos. And again, somebody may make the yo disappear. The yo is there as a prompt. Okay, for you. Lea, because we start with leo, right? We start with that yo form to get to the subjunctive. We get rid of the o, and because it's an ER verb, we pop the opposite vowel on. Lea, lea. Okay, no puedo salir antes de que, I can't leave until we clean up the kitchen, until we all clean up the kitchen.
Limpiemos.
Limpiemos, exacto. Limpiemos. No puedo salir antes de que nosotros limpiemos la cocina. And again, nosotros was there kind of as a cue for you to keep straight what form you needed. People will typically leave out the word nosotros when they actually say this, okay? No puedo salir antes de que limpiemos la cocina. I feel like I'm adding all kinds of extra words in there when I've got the nosotros, but you need a prompt, yeah? So you know who you're conjugating it for. See.
So in the first person and the third person singular, it's the same ending. So would you use yo or el or ella or usted before that? So you clarify whether you're first person or third person?
Sí. Yeah, because yo in subjunctive shares the same conjugation as the ella usted conjugation. You will often have a yo or a person specifically named. Yeah, it may be necessary. Yes. Gracias. Buen punto. Good point. Okay. So we've got our antes de que examples. No puedo salir antes de que limpiemos la cocina. And tengo que preparar la comida antes de que vengan los invitados. Vengan los invitados. Tengo que preparar la comida. I've got to fix the food antes de que vengan los invitados. Before the guests. Yeah, the invitees. The invited ones. Guests. Antes de que vengan los invitados. Okay. And this antes de que is a real definite 100% subjunctive flag, red flag. Before somebody does something. Before means it hasn't happened yet. The very nature of the phrase antes de que, before, means that activity you're talking about has not even happened yet. So you start to understand with antes de que and with a menos que, unless, both of those, the meanings of those phrases mean the action coming afterwards here, it hasn't even happened. Yeah. So because it hasn't existed yet, we have to have subjunctive. These a menos que and antes de que, they're 100% gotta use subjunctive. They're not like that tal vez, matter of interpretation, the maybe word. Before you go, well, you haven't gone yet. Yeah. Before you say that, yeah. It means it hasn't happened. Okay. So those you can always think of a menos que and antes de que as 100%, 100%. Don't even have to think about it. These are why these are easy prompts for subjunctive. What that phrase means tells you, that action hasn't existed, it hasn't really happened. Okay, let's look at some examples. Para que. Para que means so that. So that. Escribe mi número de teléfono para que
Tu puedas.
puedas. Exacto. Muy bien, muy bien. Tú puedas, and here is where that stem change comes in, because it's a stem changing verb and it's in the shoe. We just use the opposite vowel for poder. Escribo mi número de teléfono para que tú puedas recordarlo. And typically, people are going to drop off the tú because you already know from puedas, yeah, that you don't need to say the tú. It's a superfluous pronoun, yeah. I'm writing down my number so that you can remember it. So that you can remember it, okay. Limpiamos el patio para que todos, I am cleaning up the patio so that everybody can relax out in the yard. Relajarse.
I said los relajen.
Se
Sí.
relaje.
Relajen.
Oh,
Limpiamos el
As
patio
opposed to-
para.
shoot. I got the wrong pronoun in there. I put los.
Oh, it's got to have a set because that's a reflexive verb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was last summer.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a relaja, and you'll notice I only had one reflexive verb, but I plugged it in there. Well, I don't know if I
And you
did that on
caught me-
purpose so you would see an
No.
example, but yeah. So reflexive verbs might happen in the subjunctive thing. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I could have made it. I could have made it para que todos se sienten, so that everybody can sit down.
Question.
Sí.
Why wouldn't it be nos relajamos since you're limpiamos in the first part?
Oh, you are so smart.
That's a great
because
question.
You are seeing something we're going to talk about. Where did I put it? You're seeing something we're going to talk about. If I say we're cleaning so that we can chill out, I don't have a brand new person in that second half, do I? So, yeah, we're going to see what happens with that, but it's in a different slide. So keep that in the back of your gray matter. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Because it opens a very small can of worms, but a very small one. It opens a very small Pandora's box, but one that is easy to shut. Yeah.
And remind me on reflexive, the se doesn't become ses or anything because
No,
it's
it is
always
impossible. It is impossible to get from say into the word. There is, okay, so let's put it very simply this way. Say is always say.
Okay,
They can never be ses. That word doesn't exist.
okay,
You look that up in the dictionary, doesn't exist. Can't do that.
all right.
Se is always se. Okay, we're going to come back to this idea of what if it's across the board, nosotros. We're going to come back to that in a couple minutes. Okay. En un par de minutos, just a couple minutes. Let's come up with your original sentences, and they can be anything, and you can pick whichever of these 6 triggers are comfortable for you. So yeah, 2 original sentences. And you know what? I'll create a frases originales.
I'm looking at a blank piece of paper that apparently I didn't flip over to see this stuff.
Okay. Está bien.
How
That's
about-
okay.
Ojalá que yo volé.
Ojalá, ojalá que llueva.
No, yo volé, VOLE.
Oh,
I wish I could fly, or if only I
fly.
could fly.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm
Ojalá
butchering it.
que vuela. And why does it do that? Because volar is to
Is that a stem
fly.
changer?
It is a stem changer. It's
Oh,
an
darn
O
it.
to UE. Yeah. Ojalá que vuela mañana. Hopefully I'm flying tomorrow. Yeah. You know, you're praying for no cancellation. Yeah.
Why is that vuela, not vuele?
Why is volar not? Oh, perdón, vuele. Gracias.
Sí.
Gracias, vuele. Vuele. Ojalá que vuele. Que yo, and there is where it's good to put the yo in. Ojalá que yo vuele mañana.
Just when I think I finally understood using the other verb endings, you fooled me.
See, yeah. And even I did a bloop with that. So there you go. Okay. Ojalá que yo vuele mañana, que no haya cancelación del vuelo. ¿Ok? Bien. Otro ejemplo.
Why would you not say cancelaciones? Like cancellations.
I could.
Okay.
Cancelaciones. Ojalá que no haya cancelaciones. I absolutely could make that plural. Yeah, sí. No importa. Doesn't matter. Hold on. Okay. Otro ejemplo. Another example.
Es importante que no se duche después de tomando 2 vasos de vino.
Es importante. Okay, and help me out because I'm not remembering all that. Es importante que
No se duche.
que yo. Is it yo?
No, third person.
Oh, perdón. Que no
you.
se duche, that you don't take a shower. Es importante que no se duche.
Después de
Sí, después
tomando,
tomar. Taking?
drinking,
Oh, sí, drinking too. Tomar.
tomando 2 vasos de vino.
Es importante que no se duche después de tomar 2 vasos de vino, after drinking a couple of wines. Okay, bien. Es importante que no se duche. You could change it to, if you were talking to you specifically, es importante que no te duches, right? Es importante que no se duchen, right? That can go into whoever you're talking about. Bueno, sí.
Would
But
that be
not-
correct though?
But
If
not,
I just wanted to, sorry.
go
If I
ahead.
just wanted to like say a general, you shouldn't take a shower after you have a bunch of wine.
Sí. Eso, sí. But you won't have a tomando. It'll be just tomar. right?
Okay.
We got that little Spanish hitch of after a preposition, and de is a preposition, we can't use tomando, it'll be just tomar. Okay, and that makes your sentence shorter to say, because it's just tomar instead of tomando. Bien? Okay. Bueno, but you got this core thing in. That was what we're looking for, the core idea, and you got that in really well. Okay, bueno, otro ejemplo.
Ojalá que los estudiantes comprendan la tarea español.
Ojalá, ojalá que los estudiantes comprendan la tarea de español. Hopefully the students understand the Spanish homework. Exacto, comprendan, comprendan. Perfecto. Okay.
Necesito más dinero para que compre un nuevo carro.
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
Necesito más
Más
dinero.
dinero.
¿Para qué?
¿Para qué?
Compré.
Okay.
Compré.
See, maybe, but won't be necessary here. So you're going to lead me into my other slide, but this is okay. Un carro nuevo.
Sí.
See, bien. Okay. So now here, we're going to set up something here. And you'll notice this went red.
Para
Uh-oh.
que comprar.
Uh-oh.
Para que
Oh.
comprar.
Oh, let's take a look at this. Who needs it?
Yo.
Joe. Who's buying it?
Yo.
I don't have two different people, do I?
Oh, sí.
Oh,
Sí.
so here's what happens. If I don't have a change of subject, if person number one is the same as person number two, now, okay, you kind of could, but here's what usually happens. If the person is the same person on both sides here with para, here is what generally happens.
Comprar.
See,
Yeah.
here is what is standard
Sí.
Spanish. Necesito más dinero para comprar un carro nuevo. And now that you say, oh, I've heard stuff like that before. Yeah. Oh, I've heard stuff like that before. Yeah. Because we're talking about yo up here, and we're still talking about yo up here. There really is no need to plug in a subjunctive. So that is something, it is let us say a condition that is frequently exists with this subjunctive structure. Okay, so here's
What if you say something like, they need to give me more money so that I could buy a car? Para que,
my parents need to loan me money so I can buy a car. There is something we can work with. Mis padres necesitan darme más dinero. And I think it wants me to put the me in here, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. Me necesitan dar más dinero so that I can do the buying. Yeah. And now you see what happens. Now we're setting up two different human beings. Padres here, yo here. ¿Para qué? And notice it's not just para, it's para qué. Compre un nuevo carro, un carro nuevo. Okay, bien, okay. And here you see the setup. One human being doing this action and somebody else, I'll specifically name the yo, para que yo compre.
Mhm.
and a different human being. This is what really needs to exist with para que, para que. When I have yo in the setup here and yo doing the same thing here, it is not para que, it's just para. Yeah, just para. So that is something we're going to take a look at in just a quick minute. Any other quick examples you want to give me here?
Yeah, I would like to give one, but I have a question first.
That's
Is
fine.
there anything special about the verb estar in going to subjunctive?
About estar?
Yes.
Nothing special except that it is slightly irregular, which you're going to get a video to watch to see what happens there. But it's going to say, oh, but it's going to say estar instead of an a ending. It's going to get an e ending. So you won't base on the yo there. It'll just be este, estés, este, estemos, estén.
Okay.
I'll give you. Well,
Well,
no,
let me-
you give me
let me-
your example.
Yeah. So no creo que los Dodgers estén mejor que los D-backs este año.
Oh, no creo que ¿cuál es el equipo? What's the team?
Los Angeles Dodgers. No
Que
creo
los Dodgers.
Los Dodgers estén mejor que los D-backs este año.
But you'll need a different verb. Instead of ser, you'll need estar.
Well, that's what I said. I said estén.
Well, yeah. But with mejor, we're going to use ser, a form of a ser, instead of a form of estar. Es mejor, it's better. Ellos son mejores, they are better. Instead of estar, we use ser with that word mejor.
Okay, I believe you, although I'm thinking in this context, it changes.
Okay.
It's not inherent.
I'm trying to find an example of something that might work with that. Bien. No creo que los Dodgers no creo que los Dodgers estén estén cansados, or something like that. This is one of those things of ser and estar, right? This would be a subjunctive for estar, and this would be a subjunctive for ser. You're going to actually see which ones go weird, truly weird and subjunctive in the homework video for the week coming up, so that you can know. And it's not a long list. It's a very, very short list of words, but okay. Okay, bien. Otros ejemplos. Vale,
No creo que ellos hablen francés.
No creo. Do you have a no creo there, Nora? Lo
No
siento.
creo que ellos hablen francés.
Exacto. I don't think that they speak French. ¿Sí? No creo que hablen francés. Exacto. Fantástico. Okay. Buenos ejemplos. Good examples. Good examples. We had one kind of odd set of examples here, and we're going to take a quick look at that before we wrap up for the day. And here is what I want you to remember. Sometimes there is a real subtle difference between antes de and antes de que. They both mean before. And similarly, sometimes there is a difference between para and para que. All right. Para and antes de have a different kind of pattern that they use when that little word que isn't used. So in other words, antes de will not use subjunctive, but antes de que will use subjunctive. Para will not need subjunctive, but para que does need subjunctive. We're going to look at how you know the difference. When there isn't a change of subject, that is when we don't plug in a second person in the action, okay, something special happens. Para is followed by an infinitive if you're only talking about that one human being. Here's an example. Estudias para aprender español. You study in order to learn Spanish. You're studying, you're also doing the learning. I do not have a change of subject, the human doing the action. When that happens, we just have para and infinitive, the simplest combination possible. Para, a preposition followed by the infinitive, right? But if I've got estudias español para que ellos te puedan entender, you are studying Spanish so that they can understand you. I am switching from you doing the studying, tú, to ellos, they can understand you. I'm shifting to a different set of people. And because I've got a human being plugged in, a different human being, different from the tú I was talking about before in the first half, I need the que and I need a subjunctive. That's the difference. So para with, when you're all talking about the same person in that sentence, will just be para with an infinitive. But once I have one human being and then para que, different human being, I need subjunctive. The same thing happens with antes de. Antes de plus infinitive is the pattern if you're only talking about one person in that sentence, the same consistent person. Okay. Corto las verduras, I'm cutting up the veggies. Corto las verduras antes de freírlas. Antes de freírlas, before frying them. I'm cutting and I'm frying. And because there's no change, I'm doing the cutting and I'm doing the frying. It'll just be antes de and the not conjugated, the simple, plain old vanilla flavor infinitive verb. Corto las verduras antes de freírlas.
Could it be antes de las freír?
No.
No.
Because when I'm using, if I say fry them, if I've got an infinitive form, freír, I can only tag the las onto the end of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But now look what happens. Mom left me a note. I got home from school. I'm a kid. Mom left me a note. Cut this stuff up before I get home. Yeah, I got to work before. Yeah, I get home before mom gets home. Corto las verduras antes de que mamá venga a la cocina. I'm cutting up the veggies before
Mama comes home.
mom comes into the kitchen. Okay. I'm doing the cutting, but wow, I better do this before mom arrives on the scene. I switch it to mama. So when I switch it to mama, then I need a que. I need a que and mom and the subjunctive, right? So I don't have to do that if the person involved in those two activities is the same person. With the word antes de, or with the phrase, I should say, antes de, and with the word, because it's not a phrase, para, right? Then it goes to a shorty form. It goes to a shorty form, right? So That's how I get to, momentito. That's how I get to this idea. It's impossible. Oh, no, wait. No, it isn't. I'm sorry. I have my examples elsewhere. Different slide. Perdón. And where was that example? I think we talked about this. Oh, yeah. We promised we would come back to this. We're coming back to this. We're cleaning the patio so that everybody can relax out in the backyard. But if I just want to say we're cleaning the patio so that we can relax, we're doing the cleaning and we're also doing the relaxing. So there's no need for me. There's no change of subject. There's no person doing this and different person doing that. So I don't need to do that. So let's take a look at this. Limpiamos el patio para relajarnos en el jardín. We are cleaning the patio. Trying to get back to, it doesn't want to let me get back. We're cleaning the patio to relax in the garden, and we're doing the cleaning. We also want to do the relaxing. Really no need to use subjunctive because I don't have a change of subject. Yeah. So I want you to be aware of that because quite often, quite frequently, we learn this thing in Spanish of using para plus the infinitive or antes de plus the infinitive. Yeah. And that holds true when I'm only talking about one, a consistently same human being doing both of those actions. Does that make some sense? See?
Yeah. See.
Bien? Okay. So in a way, this situation is kind of the default. This is the first thing you learn to say in Spanish. We're studying in order to do something. Estudias para aprender español. Estudias para hablar español. Estudias para hacer o resolver problemas de matemáticas. Yeah. This is kind of the default idea that we learn to use first in Spanish, but that's when I have all the same person doing all that activity consistently in the sentence. So subjunctive very, very often comes into play because I've got two different human beings, and it's that second group that I'm not quite sure if that's going to happen. Yeah. I know if it's something I plan to do myself or he plans to do himself, it's more certain if that kind of makes sense. See? Bien? Okay. That's a little introduction. We'll need some more things to flesh out a little bit more. What I'm going to give you for the coming week is the same kind of Blackboard guy. And Senora Kaplan, because it's a very brief thing. He's going to talk to you about the verbs that are truly irregular for or considered in the irregular category for subjunctive. And it's a super short list, so that isn't going to take long for you to watch that. Yeah. And I'm kind of deciding on which video I'm going to have you watch. I'm going to have a storytelling video, but it won't be tied to any grammar lesson per se, but you may hear subjunctive sprinkled here and there, no matter which one I choose for you to watch, because I was kind of deciding between 2 or 3 different videos. You notice you don't hear subjunctive all the time, just like you don't hear only present tense, only past tense, only future, right? It's all sprinkled according to the meanings we want to inject into this, the ideas that we're communicating. So you're going to get a video to watch. It's going to be, I am going to caution you, no matter which of the 2 I choose for me, it is going to be a somewhat higher speed than what you may be comfortable with. So I want you to, you may need to, and I'll show you where you find this in case you're challenged with finding it, because not everybody is savvy about how to find it. You may choose to hit the little gear button in the YouTube and hit playback speed, but caution, caution, caution. If you slow it down, only slow it down to 0.75. Do not put it down to 50% speed, because if you slow it down to that, it will sound like molasses coming out of somebody's mouth and it will be very distorted. Even 0.75, there's a little distortion, but at least it's not hideous at 0.75 speed. This is normal speed, right? So you're going to watch a little video and you will hear some subjunctive sprinkled here and there, but it won't be everywhere. Oh, you know, I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think you're going to get this one. Oh, and I'm going to give you Marcos, you had a very good phrase once where it feels like you're opening up the hose and doing the spray hose.
Yeah,
It's gonna feel a little like that. So I'm going to tell you, slow him down. Here's a little guy who's going to be talking. I'm going to give you his video because se llama Luisito. His name is Luisito. This guy, I kid you not, is such a famous YouTuber. When he walks down the street someplace in Latin America, people immediately, it would be like Tom Cruise walking down the street. Not because of any super handsomeness thing. He is just that well known, especially amongst young people. He is like an immediately recognizable person. He is that popular. He is going to talk a lot of slang. So be on the lookout for if he injects some weird word. First of all, there are going to be a couple of Chinese terms and they're going to be Chinese. So just let those go. That means there's a Chinese word he can't translate because he's going to talk about a sports item and it just has a Chinese name, which he uses. Okay. But you're going to hear him say stuff like crack. And crack is a very, well, it's both Mexican and Spanish. I think they use this everywhere. He's Mexican, but I know they use it in Spain too. Crack is a very slang word that 20 and 30-year-olds use to say like, awesome. So when you hear crack, just know crack means, whoa, so cool. Yeah, that's all it means. But he's going to talk about little old people exercising. He travels all over the world and he likes to make videos about odd things he sees in his travels. So that's what you're going to see. Bien, todo bien? Sí. And I'll probably, and I will tie up some subjunctive practice to prep into that video. Actually, I have a way to tie this together. It's up here. It's not down on paper yet. Okay, todo bien? All good?
Sí. Gracias.
Magnifico.
Gracias.
De nada,
Gracias.
de nada, de nada. Okay, so you'll get some more subjunctive practice to prep for next week. You'll have a video, and that video is going to be a challenging video. So I'm going to say, do not expect to understand every single word he says. It's perfectly okay to just get the general idea. But he is going to sprinkle in some subjunctive here and there. So just kind of notice and like do a hashtag. He uses subjunctive. Oh, he used it a second time. Just notice. Just notice. Okay? Be the fly on the wall. But don't try to translate every single word. I am going to preview it again just to plug in any unusual vocabulary like I did for the Juan video last week. I'm going to plug in a little vocabulary list and have that little list with you when you listen to Luisito and you'll, todo bien, it'll all be good. Okay? Vale. Fantastic. Okay.
Gracias.
De nada, de nada, de nada. Que tengan buen fin de semana. Have a good weekend. I'm not going to give you any extra reading because that video is going to be challenging enough that you don't need any extra time on that. You're going to have to listen to the video probably 3 times through. Expect to listen 3 times through. That'll be really normal. And you may need 4. Quizás you may need 4. And don't feel like I'm deficient if you need 4. No, not at all. But you want to just get the general idea of what he's saying, and you will be able to get the general idea. Okay? Yeah.